Welcome back, everyone, and we are in for a fantastic treat this evening. So thanks for hanging in there and joining us for this wonderful session that we're about to hear from a very talented individual who has a great music background as well. I think he's got some connection to Dr. Mark Speed somehow. I think maybe played a little snare drum or something like that for him in the Clemson band. So we're really honored to have him here. It's my pleasure to welcome Elliot Cleveland, who's a physical therapist with ATI Physical Therapy and founder of Marching Health. And he's going to be presenting on a great session, 7 mistakes that every marching band makes with training. Elliot, welcome and thanks for being with us.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm really excited for it. So I'm going to pivot a little bit from what I originally intended to talk about, which is more specific to the conditioning aspect. I want to address more of the whole quarantine and COVID-19 issues that you're going to face in regards to your members' health. Same topic, 7 mistakes that your band, if you're not listening to this, is going to make. But because you were listening, you are going to avoid these mistakes, these common pitfalls that we're going to see in the entire country and with the musicians and the performers out on the field. So mistake number 1, if you were taking notes, mistake number 1 that you can make as a band director is ramping up activity too quickly. If you're paying attention to sports right now, you know that all live sports except NASCAR have been put on hold. I've been paying attention really closely to the Major League Baseball arenas and the National Basketball Association, the NBA, and really figuring out what their sports scientists are saying as far as them being able to resume their seasons or start their seasons. And we have to pay very close attention to that because we are marching athletes. Your performers are doing really high level things in large quantities, especially on game day or on show day. And we have to treat them as such. We have to think about what are the actual physiological conditions that they are putting their bodies under. So ramping up activity too quickly is going to lead to injuries. The NBA specifically has been saying, hey, we can't start our season, our postseason, until we've had at least 10 pickup games between different teams so that they can get into shape for the postseason so that people won't get hurt. Your band is going to have students get hurt, get injured more often because they are coming out of double the summertime they usually have, which usually leads to twice the inactivity. If you aren't ramping up slowly when you guys do come together in person, those injuries are going to be on you and on the logistics that you put into the schedule of the season. We're talking with some friends at Blue Knights Drum and Bugle Corps last year, and during spring training for Blue Knights out in Colorado, nobody else has this problem except Blue Knights. They got snowed in May. So Blue Knights couldn't go out and do visual block. They couldn't go do ensemble rehearsal on their feet. They could not physically put as many steps on their bodies as they otherwise normally would have during spring training. What did that actually result in? Well, they had to slowly ramp up their activity as the snow melted and the snowstorm kind of subsided. And they had fewer injuries than they had had in years past. I talked to other drum corps that we work with and other marching bands that we work with about doing this exact same thing. You're going to be tempted because you haven't been able to get together in person. You haven't been able to have in-person auditions most likely, or you may be missing some of your summer calendar where you usually do a lot of visual basics and ramp up the activity through that. If you don't get together until that very first day of Bandcamp, you're probably going to be tempted to go too fast and try to get things out there if the season gets shortened. Resist that urge because that is going to result in more injuries in your students. The shin splints that you've seen in the past, the muscle strains, those soft tissue injuries, they're just overuse issues because you go too fast too soon. Gradually increase that activity. What that means from you as a director is looking at your schedule and saying, okay, how can we change the proportion of music rehearsal to visual rehearsal and slowly increase that during our first week. Number 2 is going to stem straight from that. So number 2 in the 7 mistakes that bands are likely to make due to COVID-19 is get outside too quickly. What? This is marching band, right? You should be getting outside. Yes, but it takes 7 to 14 days for the human body to acclimate to the heat. I marched at Clemson with Dr. Mark Speed. It was hot as Hades out there in Clemson, South Carolina during band camp. And we see people drop Every year, we encourage people to take frequent water breaks so that they would not be getting overhydrated, or sorry, not overhydrated. We wish they were overhydrated, overheated. But you have to give your students that time and anticipate that a decent amount of them are not getting outdoors like they need to be. I call this the 80-20 rule in marching band. 20% of your students are going to cause 80% of the missed reps and missed dots and missed notes. You know who that bottom 20% is. Your section leaders can tell you, if you don't know, who those bottom 20% of the people coming back this year are going to be. You have to prepare for them from a health standpoint and make sure that your calendar reflects that, so that you ramp up and don't lose them in the start and don't cause health emergencies, because COVID-19 by itself is enough of a health emergency for all of us. Heat stroke is the #2 cause of death in youth athletes. We are in control of that. And this goes into point number 3. Make sure that you are hydrating more frequently than you probably think you need to. Hydration has many symptoms that we commonly miss as directors and as staff members. We think students are messing up on the field. We think they're ticking, or we think they're missing their dot, or totally blowing a direction change, when many times it's actually just that they're dehydrated. This is something we've been working with marching bands on doing, is implementing a hydration protocol. If it is above a certain heat index or a certain wet bulb globe temperature, if you have access to that information, you have to make sure that you are setting a timer and giving water breaks according to that. You may need to break from some of your old habits, because we want you to avoid putting your students at risk, not just of heat and exposure during marching band rehearsal, but also help them perform better. Mental fatigue and mental errors are one of the most common symptoms and easiest symptoms to spot for kids that are going from dehydration into heat exhaustion into that final stage of heat stroke, which is deadly. So make sure, number 3, that you are setting a heat and hydration protocol for your band for this coming year. They're most likely coming off their couch, playing a little too much Fortnite or whatever video games they're playing this year, and not hydrating enough. They probably have soda beside them. They probably have something that's not ideal for hydration. So you're going to have to combat that and encourage water, as you most likely do. But they also are going to have to use their own water bottle, because it's not going to be sanitary for us to be sharing water sources like many groups have in the past. So make sure that as you ramp up your activity slowly, as you ramp up going outside slowly, you also put hydration at the forefront of your members' health. Number 4 mistake is not having a physical fitness component virtually. Maybe I should take a step back. Maybe not having a physical fitness component at all is the first step. So in the chat, we put our link to our free Back to Band workout. That is a 6-week program for you to send out to your members right now, or prospective members, to say, hey, we expect you guys to show up in shape this year, because we need you to be ready when Bandcamp starts. You can look back at those first 3 points that I made, and if they actually come into Bandcamp in better shape than they have in past years, those points don't matter quite as much, because those kids are coming into the season better physically prepared. But this point is actually more about the virtual side of things. You can use this to create a virtual culture, to create some community within your band that you probably never would have had otherwise. And you don't have to do it. I'm going to get to that point later. But I would encourage you to start using virtual platforms, whether it's Facebook Live, Instagram Live, or whether it is Zoom, and doing it in large classroom styles, and having some students, some section leaders lead some dance classes, some workouts, something physical, something that's going to make them active without them necessarily knowing that they're becoming active. It could be just having a stand-up musical rehearsal, just fun kind of audition prep rehearsal with them. So next one, mistake number 5 is skipping a warm-up and going straight into rehearsal this year. More than any other year, do not skip a physical dynamic warm-up. One of the things, if you've followed marching health at all, you always hear us preach about, is get away from, having your group walk out, get in a circle, and reach for their toes, and then reach their arm across their chest like this and count to 30, and then switch sides and do it like this. Use movement. The human body is made to move. Use movement, use a dynamic warm-up. If you don't know what that means, check out some of our content. Follow Marching Health at Marching Health on all social media platforms. We put this stuff out there for free so that you guys can enjoy the season and your students can be physically prepared for the season. But if you are skipping a warm-up right now, you are setting your kids up for failure. Their bodies need to be ready. They need to have their muscles pliable and heated up before, not just due to the temperature, but actually blood flowing to their muscles. Also, a dynamic warm-up gets blood flowing to your brain a whole lot better. If you can make those students think better, you're going to start rehearsal on a better foot. Next step, mistake number 6 is not reminding your students to practice standing up. This is such a simple step. If you have audition videos this year, if you're saying, hey, my marching band needs to send virtual audition videos, which pretty much everybody is, make sure that a requirement is that you are standing up in your audition and that they understand that they need to practice standing up. They don't just need to send you a sitting in their chair playing their horn audition. I don't care how good they are. They need to be upright, fighting gravity, holding their horn in a good set position so that you know they are building the muscles that they need in their core and in their shoulders to carry that instrument. Obviously, drums can't necessarily do this, but they need to be standing up as well. They need to be practicing outside. This is the next thing. Remind them to practice outdoors so that they get used to the heat. It could be that you guys have a live virtual audition prep session outdoors. So you say, hey, this is going to be marching band. We encourage you right now to go ahead and get outside. We're going to do this live from my backyard, or whoever is leading it. They're going to be in their backyard. So that encourages the other students to get outside as well. And that just plants the seed for them to continue making their practice zone outdoors, not just indoors in their room away from everything. We want them out in the community, used to the sunlight, used to holding up their instrument so that they are physically being challenged, because science says, this is a crazy stat, it takes 4 to 6 weeks for your body to get adjusted to exercise and activity. That's called neural adaptation. Neural adaptation meaning it takes 4 to 6 weeks for your brain to get used to telling your body that it's active again. You don't have muscle growth for almost 2 months. It's terrible. Like, why couldn't we be made to have that process speed up? You know, all of us vain people, summer's coming up, we want to look good on the beach. Nah, man, you got to start 4 to 6 weeks ahead of time if you're going to get that curve to start going in your favor when it's time to take a shirt off and hit the swimming pool or hit the beach. You got to tell your students 4 to 6 weeks before band starts, you got to start holding your horn up. You got to get outside. You got to be physically active. This back to band workout program that we posted in the chat is 6 weeks for a reason. Not just that high school usually ends 6 weeks before the following school year begins or college band camps begin, but it's 6 weeks to get them past that neural adaptation part so that when they show up for you, that job's already done. One thing that I forgot to mention on the hydration protocols part is the actual ratios that we use. If you look at sports athletic associations state to state, most of them say for every 30 minutes of physical activity you do, especially outdoors, you need to get a 5-minute break. Don't span that out to be an hour of activity and then spot them 10 minutes at the end. Because if you do that, you're an hour behind on hydration. And you know your rehearsals don't last that long. If you hydrate them, write this down, save it, tweet it later. If you hydrate well in the first hour and first block of the day, they're going to be good. Not that you don't need to stop hydrating them, but you're going to be setting yourself up for the rest of the day. If you underhydrate during that first hour and first block of rehearsal, you've lost them. They're going to have mental fatigue for the rest of the day. I can promise you that. We've been working with too many groups, whether it's drum corps, whether it's WGI, even indoors. When we see the dehydration occur early in the day, it's going to be a long day of rehearsal, pulling teeth to get them to pay attention, pulling teeth to go set to set and move through learning the opener, learning the ballad, learning the closer. One thing you can do is break that up for even hotter days. What I do is take my phone out. This is the most powerful tool in the world. Set an alarm for 15 minutes. When that alarm goes off, and I tell this to my students up front, I'm going to give you 2 minutes every 15. I expect that you come back at that end of that 2 minutes, but during the 2 minutes, you can be as relaxed as you want and you can drink all the water you want to. I need 15 good minutes in exchange for those 2 minutes. And it's a mutual understanding that I am looking out for their best interest health-wise, and they get it. And especially if you're a college band director, this may be like a foreign idea if you have traditions, because we all know colleges have traditions of when we take our breaks. But if the heat is over 95, this is what we're doing. And I did this at the freshman level, teaching at Wando High School. We did this with our youngest drumline ever. And we thought, man, if we give them more water breaks, they're going to be just unruly during rehearsal. They're going to not understand how to come back from a break. Discipline is going to plummet. Actually, they came back from breaks the best we've ever had. The mental fatigue didn't exist. They weren't mentally tired because they were hydrated the whole time. They were cooling off every 15 minutes. Not just cooling off with water, but cooling off their bodies so that their brain could function at optimal capacity. You guys know if you've ever had a fever and your temperature is going way too high, you can't think very well. It's a similar concept when you guys are out there on the field if you're not getting enough breaks to let your students cool down. You could do 15 and 2s the whole rehearsal and be super efficient. You could do 30 and 5s, whatever works for you, but make sure you're hydrating on the front end of things so that you can be successful the rest of the day. The biggest point and mistake that band directors make is not utilizing their student leadership to do these things. It's not all on your plate. You can take a lot of this off your plate and give to them. If you say, hey, student leadership, I want you guys to learn a dynamic warm-up or a dance warm-up for 5 minutes that we're going to do every day when we get to rehearsal during band camp. You're in charge of it, drum majors. At 8:05, we're done with it, or 9:05, whatever time you start, we're done with that. But I want you to be in charge of it. I want you to get the group warmed up, help them have fun, help them stay focused, and help us start rehearsal better. That takes it off your plate. You get 5 more minutes to chat with the rest of your staff about what the goals are for that rehearsal. And the best part is that gives them something tangible to use, something tangible to develop their leadership skills and their communication skills. I'm a big believer in student leadership and development of those student leaders. And when we go do clinics, half of our day is devoted to developing the student leadership team and teaching them to be mini coaches out there, extensions of the staff out there. This is the best thing that you can do is equip your student leaders with that. You could take the hydration thing off your plate and you can have a drum major run that the whole day. Set the timer for what you guys decide and make sure that the drum major blows the whistle every time that timer goes off so you know. And then you stop rehearsal. You can even save your comments for when they get back because I promise the comments will sink in much better after they've been hydrated. I promise. And they get that feedback right before they start their next rep. The last thing I want to say is conditioning does not mean go run all day. Marching bands are guilty of doing too much running when in fact, most of our day is not steady state cardio. You have different tempos in your show, just like you need to prepare differently for that. You don't need to go be running at the exact same tempo. If you're like, we're going to get in shape this year, let's go out and run 8 minutes because our halftime show is 8 minutes long or whatever it is. That doesn't make any sense. Your halftime show changed 4 times tempo wise. You need to prep for that. Make sure you're doing some interval training, sprint for 30 seconds, walk for 30 seconds, and teach them how to breathe during that. Use breathing gym exercises, use the things that you know, but don't make them just go run steadily when most of the time they're running really poorly. Very few of us actually know how to run well until you train them how to do that or until you tell them to go follow our Twitter account and we post all the running tips that they need, then they're probably going to end up hurting themselves more than helping themselves. Speaking of, if you're a director on here and you're not in the Band Directors for Better Health Facebook group, Facebook community, you need to join that. Band Directors for Better Health. Search that on Facebook. We're about to start our free Podium to 5K plan. Podium to 5K run walk for band directors We've got 140 band directors registered already. Jump in on that. It's a lot of fun. Our marching health team leads a weekly workout during it. We have mental health professionals come in, nutrition specialists come in and give you tools to realistically take control of your health as a band director. It's run by myself, another band director, and a couple other health experts. But that's the gist of it for today. That is the 7 mistakes you're likely to make due to COVID-19. Don't make those mistakes. Don't ramp up too quickly. Don't get them outside too quickly. Make it gradual. Think about your schedule differently. Make sure you hydrate well. Make sure there's a physical fitness, especially a virtual physical fitness component to create community right now. Make sure your students are practicing and submitting their audition videos, standing up, even getting outside. And then don't run too much. All right. Also use your student leadership team. Thank you guys.
Elliot, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, that was wonderful. And you have brought a new light to so much, I think, what we are guilty of as band directors. So thanks so much for sharing. And we're fortunate enough for everybody out there. Elliot's going to join us again tomorrow night and share some wonderful tips for us as well. Elliot, if you don't mind, if we could have another couple minutes with you, we've got a couple questions here. So the first one, can you repeat your 4th point that you brought up that was asked of one of our listeners out there?
I apologize if you're organized. First off, I called it the 7 mistakes and I wrote down 8 points, but I did ramp up activity. Don't get outside too quickly. Make sure you build up your activity tolerance and build up your heat tolerance. I think the 3rd one was hydrate enough. And the 4th one was make sure you have a virtual and a physical fitness component in general. And that's what we specialize in with Marching Health with our 15-minute marching band workout. That's what we go teach clinics and teach to bands all over the country. But have a virtual physical fitness component. The link we posted is the free back to band workout. You can have your section leaders or drum majors. This could be a really cool recruitment opportunity. Post on your social media pages for your band and say, free to all Zoom workout or live Facebook workout with our drum majors to get you active for band. Don't forget to tag at Marching Health with the workout you're doing. We would love to share it with the world. So if I see your band out there doing it, we're going to be pressing that share button on the Marching Health page and posting about it too. Let's see, Barry, could you download that PDF and just post the PDF straight in there?
I sure can. I'll do that. And then while I'm doing that, if you don't mind, one more question. What are your recommendations? I think some of this is transferable wherever you are, but we want to hear it from the horse's mouth first. What are your recommendations for those of us who can only practice outside, which, you know, after today, I think we all need to realize that's probably where we are going to be practicing and not practicing inside at all. So what advice do you have for us for being outdoors?
That's a great question. That leads into the other point about where I was talking about hydration and making sure that you're taking not just hydration breaks, but body cooling breaks. I would encourage students to have kind of a cooling towel with them and make sure that they're putting water on that towel and putting it on their neck throughout that rehearsal sequence and cooling their bodies off. Find shade as much as possible. I know that really depends on your campus. It depends on what you have available. Go slowly. If you're gonna be outside, go slowly, meaning take more breaks originally than you think you have to. Instruct your section leaders in that. Make sure there's no gung-ho section leaders that get lost in time and start going for 45 minutes in a row without, letting the people rest for a second. It could even be, if you're stuck in a parking lot in everybody's cars, say, all right, we're taking a 5-minute break to get in your car and turn the AC on. Be creative with it. I came from a drum corps background where you don't know where you're going to be when you wake up that day, and you just run to find the shadiest spot you can find. And that's really, what it ends up being. Sometimes that means you and the person next to you in the snare line alternate who's going to be the tree and who's going to be in the tree's shade. You just kind of stand in each other's path, but find the shadiest spot possible. And it may even be like a altitude thing. So if you're in a really hilly campus and say there's not a lot of trees around, it may be that you guys need to find the valleys or find the windiest part, so that you can get that cooling, natural cooling system. I hope that helps.
Great. And on the other perspective, from compared to Clemson, South Carolina, or any of our friends down south, can you maybe share a little bit of any tips or things we need to be looking at for those of us that have to practice in the cold or the rain, coming from our good colleague Brad McDavid out in Seattle, Washington? They see their fair share of rain quite a bit. So, anything to adjust with some of these plans that you're sharing with us this evening?
That's a great question. I don't know that I was even prepared for it. Man, you guys are good. In the rain, my biggest concern is always the field conditions and making sure that the members are okay with and feel comfortable marching on that field and on that surface. And if it's during a rehearsal, there may be some instances where you have to modify the sections of the show that you're going to rehearse that day. If you know that you have the trombones doing this crazy fast conveyor belt style drill piece where there's a very quick direction change, you may say, hey, we're just going to touch that. We're not going to rep it a bunch so that they don't have the risk of slipping. Same thing if you have big tempo changes, you may want to just be very cautious about when and where you rehearse those spots. This is something that we always have these higher level conversations with directors and visual caption heads, is really adjusting your rehearsal to the environment that day. Sometimes, physically, you shouldn't be rehearsing one segment of the show because it may be very physically taxing on a certain section's body. If they have to really extend their legs, you can potentially have some hip flexor issues or tendon strain issues. But same thing happens when there's weather or environment changes, making sure that you're cautious about and thinking ahead, just being proactive about how you touch each point within that.
Great. Thanks again, Elliot. And I think there's someone I see he turned off his camera. Well, actually turned on his camera so he can chime in. So, Dr. Speed, any words, anything to share?
Yeah, it's great to see you, Elliot. Thanks for being with us. Of course, he was our snare captain a few years ago. But one other thing people might consider is adjusting their Bandcamp schedule so that you start maybe earlier in the morning and just send them home in the heat of the day if it's going to be a hot day, and then come back in the evening and just really spread those rehearsals out and just send them away if we're not able to be inside. So that's another scheduling solution to look at. But great job, Elliot. Thank you.
Thank you, man. I miss those like siesta breaks we used to have at Clemson during those hot times.
No breaks.
Well, great. Thank you. And Elliot, thank you once again for sharing your wonderful talents and expertise with us. And we look forward to, again, seeing you tomorrow. For those of you still online, we'll make this adjustment tomorrow, but we're going to get Elliot in an earlier spot right after the dinner break. He's going to join us at 6:30 Central Time before some folks start going to some of their virtual receptions and so forth. But again, such valuable information, Elliot. And again, we appreciate all that you're doing, obviously in your day job, but certainly with what you've done with Marching Health and how that has impacted so many of our programs. And it's great to put the person behind that with that Twitter handle and other social media that's out there. So thank you again.
Thank y'all for having me.
All right, everyone. Well, there it is. Day one is in the books. Many thanks for joining us, and we wish you well. There's some of the addresses of those virtual receptions taking place, or if you've got your own thing going on, definitely fellowship together, spend some time together. We can't do it face-to-face, so we've been staring at a screen for most of the day, so we might as well continue to do that the rest of the evening. But again, join together with our great colleagues around the country. And again, we thank you all these great presenters, all the great sessions we've had today, and we hope to see all of you back again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central Time. We look forward to seeing you then. Take care, everyone. Good night.